One of the most important things to being a good painter is being good looking. I was fortunate and was born with that gift, but being good looking is something you can learn. You have to just take the time to really look at what you're painting. In this case, we're going to be painting waves, so I'm just going to point out some of the things that you look for and try to understand when you're painting waves. So this first example, I'm just illustrating how when a wave is backlit, or the light shines through the wave, you get the lighter at the crest and darker down below, like you'll see in the red arrows. And when you see the green arrows, you'll see that it's darker, and that's when we're looking into the depth of the water. So it's either through the face of the lower part of the transparent wave, or when the wave is not backlit, through the whole face of the wave. You can also get these in little rivulets or little waves between the waves. What you're seeing is down into the water. So whatever color the water is that's the color you're going to get on the face of the wave. So in this case, the water tends to have a greenish blue hue, and so you're going to get that color in there, and that's what that water looks like when it's in volume. And where you see the blue arrows pointing to is the trough area of the wave. This is the area of the wave that is nearly flat, and what it's doing is reflecting the sky either above or just in front of you. And so whatever the sky color is, this flat area will be the sky color. And the sky color can vary a great deal from horizon to above your head, so there can be a huge variety of colors. One of the other things that we look for is when you have a crashing wave or a breaking wave, this white water at the tip of the wave is full of bubbles and whatnot and is actually opaque, whereas the rest of the water is fairly transparent. And you can see this in this image where the red arrows are pointing to the shadow just in front of the white water. Even as you're getting to the shore with this dying wave, you can still see that shadow along the edge of that.
GoPro, stop recording.
So I've done a quick drawing of roughly what we're going to be painting as far as the waves go. Minimize the sky because this is not about the sky, this is about the waves. And the colors I've laid out is a warm red. This could be a naphthol red, a pyro red, a cadmium red, and it can be either medium or light. It really doesn't make a huge difference. I've set out here, both these are liquid, and that doesn't matter either. This is a yellow medium, and I think it's an aerolite, but a cadmium, bismuth, naphthol, azo yellow are all fine. We're just mixing an orange, so it really isn't going to make a huge difference. This is the ultramarine blue, and this is the phthalo blue. These two blues are the only blues I ever use, and the three of these are all high viscosity paint. Again, just happen to have the jar handy. This is burnt sienna, and this is titanium white. So we're going to start off with this painting the sky. So we're going to take some of the white, and I put out way more red than I need, and that's just because it came out so fast. So we're taking very little of that. And we're making a bit of a pastel orange. So we'll take a little bit more. Better to add the red slowly because it's very powerful, definitely a higher tinting strength than the yellow. and so it will easily take over what you're doing. So now I'm just going to come along, and that's my horizon line, but I'm going to come down into that, and I'm just going to take that orange right across. I always paint the edges with what I'm painting on front, and that way they just look well on the wall when they're hanging. I prefer not to do just a plain black. So what I've done is I'm increasing the yellow and adding more white. We want to keep this fairly light, and I'm just going to blend that into the sort of light orange that we have there. And we'll now I lay down the orange first because now we're going into a blue, and the blue will desaturate the orange, so it's definitely safer to do the blue first. And you always have to remember when you're mixing these colors, you want to be on the light side, because if you think you've got a perfect match, it will be too dark. So this is still too light, but it might be, yeah, no, I think not too light, too dark. You have to go with what I mean, not what I say. So we're just going to try some of that, and that is definitely still too dark. The final test is always on the canvas. Just drop and roll to get that excess paint off there. So I'm just going to run that. I'm not going to hit the orange. I'm just running it above the orange. And we're going to take that right up. And you want to do you can't be pussyfooting around. You need to get this done right away, because we're going to blend that blue into the orange. So we're going to get a clean brush. This is it looks like a 3/8. So we're just going to, no paint on this, it's just wet. And so I'm just going to go back and forth there and blend that into the orange. We don't want to take this up too high because you don't want to contaminate the blue, and you also don't want to bring it down too low because you don't want to contaminate the orange. So you just want to work that seam. Now, one of the things that you can do is, if you're not getting it very smooth, that is pretty smooth, probably smooth, you can get a clean dry brush and just go back and forth over that, lightly blending that. So you get a smooth blend there. So we're not going to really let that dry very much before we come in, and we're going to come in with a more saturated orange. We don't have to worry too much about this blend because the gray clouds are going to cover up most of it, but we want a more intense orange right where the sun is. So we're going to say the sun is right here. So we're just going to let that, wouldn't say peter out, but fade out. Peter out is not my favorite phrase. Don't really know why, but so then we're going to just come in, and this the yellow is very weak, so we're going to have to do this a couple of times, and also when it's dry, but we just want to get that a little bit more yellow in there. So we'll let that dry up there. While we're drying that, we'll just mix up a gray color. So we're going to use the I put a little bit of phthalo blue into that mix, but not enough that it's going to matter. You have to watch when you're mixing burnt sienna with phthalo blue because it goes green. So because we're after the gray, we're just going to use the ultramarine and burnt sienna. So we're going to get that quite a bit lighter. It's maybe gone a little bit too light. And so we're going to have this definitely on the blue side. And I think we might, just because we have the red out on the palette, we might just pick up a little bit of that red just to sort of move that. Ultramarine blue is already a warm blue. Blues are cool, but ultramarine blue is warm as blues go. And so we're just going to take a look at that. Now, one of the things that clouds frequently have flat bottoms. So you need to take that into account. So we're going to GoPro stop recording. So I've decided to turn it upside down just so that I'm not reaching, because having this relatively flat line, the terrible brush, you can see that brush is from scrubbing has got terrible hairs on that. I should switch that out, but in fact we will. Let's see what we have there. I scrub a lot with the filberts, and especially when I'm doing sky, so it is kind of hard on the brush. So we're just coming across with this. Wasn't very good. And so this cloud does reach down a little bit, so we're just going to, whether it's rain coming in, I don't really know, but we'll make it. So I've just rinsed the brush of all paint. I'm just going to be very gently softening that. We have to be very gentle. It's definitely a lot easier to do this later when the paint has had a bit more of a chance to dry. Very thin application of paint there. We're going to leave little bits of the, we're not doing quite as dense a cloud as what's in the, because I want to see some of that blend that we worked so hard to get there. So this spot, I did that on purpose because I knew I was going to put a cloud there. And if you believe that, I've got some land in Florida to sell you. A little unmixed blue in there. I just hit that, that's still pretty wet there. GoPro, stop recording. We've added the white to the yellow there just to get that coverage, because this is not a bismuth or a cad yellow, it's just an aerolite yellow. So its covering ability would not go down in history as being great. So we're going to mix up the water blue-green. We're going to use ultramarine, phthalo blue, and burnt sienna. And we want this fairly gray, so we're going to use a little bit more burnt sienna and ultramarine blue here. And the ultramarine blue you pretty much have to, just because of the tinting strength compared to phthalo blue. And I've got the canvas turned sideways just because it's a little easier to do the horizontal line, especially when you're working flat. And it's okay to have a little bit of wave action there. We're going to stop about there. Because we're going to put some of that red down into the water. So I am deliberately trying to get a little bit more action. This is pretty rough water. There aren't actually waves up here, breaking waves, but there definitely are waves all the way along the shore. And they only get to be breakers when they hit a sandbar out in the water or that they are coming into shore. Well, that certainly applies to waves on the lake, Great Lakes. Well, to tell you the truth, I've never been out in the deep Superior during a storm. I'm sure they break out there. So we're going to come in here. Just going to leave a hint of the drawing there, just so that I stay on track with what's happening with the water. I'm going to throw in some of the sky blue in, but I'm going to have it a little bit darker than what's in the sky. So we're just going to mingle a bit of that into there, getting a little bit of mixed color with the wet and wet. So rather than get into whitewater here, we're going to start describing these waves as dark. This is the dark face that we talked about at the start of this video. I have to mix up some more of that dark. It's going to be okay because we're going to actually want it getting really dark now. GoPro stop recording. So I've just added a little bit more white to the palette, and we're going to switch into the trough color, which is something somewhat similar to the sky color. It's often a little bit darker, but it can be just as light. But we're going to try to stick to relatively horizontal strokes. And we're not too worried about any of the strokes we're doing at this point, because most of these are going to get the majority of it covered. This really isn't much beyond blocking in the colors. Using a 3/8 inch flat. I'm doing this slightly below the crest of the wave. This is sort of a mid-value for the breaker. I'll be putting a whiter or lighter value on top of this. Not sure I'll go all the way to white, but this is sort of a semi-scumbling stroke. Right underneath the sun here, we'll likely do some orange tones, very pale orange tones in those breakers and in the water. Now we're going to do these little wavelets between some of them are sort of a cross between the darks and the light. These are, so we're just doing I've got to mix up a bit more of this. So it's the same color that we were using for the dark. We've just added quite a bit more white to that. Don't ever worry about putting too much down. None of these strokes are critical that you can't repaint over top of them. I like to do this fairly quickly so that it stays random. If you give yourself too much time to copy something exactly, you're going to start making it look contrived. And if I get a butt ugly stroke, which I certainly will be getting some, that I will just cover it with a gorgeous stroke after. It's one of the beauties of acrylic. I had certainly painted this way when I worked in watercolor, but you couldn't be quite as free because each mark, it was pretty much there once you made it. You could always go darker to cover some, but you certainly couldn't go lighter unless you switched to gouache, which a lot of watercolors purists really frown upon. I think whatever gets you there. GoPro, stop recording. Don't worry about anything that you say, well, I should have done something more underneath there. There's nothing here that we won't go over if we need to. What we're just trying to do is, as the painting gets more and more busy with water lines and whatnot, it's good to have something that you can still see where the heck you are. And so there's nothing about this white, well, I mean, a lot of it may survive, but there's nothing that is too precious that we're doing here. doing, there's a little bit of broken water down the bottom here, but it's fairly deep in the shadow, so we're just doing that. And whenever you do some, we can still describe the shape of that wave by the direction of our stroke. Don't just blindly draw lines thinking about that the face of this wave is curving down into the flat. I almost always paint with the tablets now. I love the fact that I can zoom in and really see what's going on there. Like you can see the details of, and some of that, like, I mean, painting in real life, an awful lot of what you're doing is guesswork, because especially if you're painting something like waves, because they're constantly moving in it, you don't really have a chance to really examine what they're doing. And it's not about copying what's there. It's about getting the gist of how those lines move, how the water moves. So we're just going to come into the dark down here. You see, I'm not very carefully painting a line going along. I'm just letting the brush skip along so that I'm getting very random marks that are much more natural looking than spending the time to look, well, this line moves exactly like this. You do want to get the gist of what that line is doing, but you don't need to get it bang on exactly what it's doing, because it'll never be like that again. we'll come in with a little bit of this lighter sand color. Maybe a little too light to start. And I'm going to do a little bit more of this where the sun is. As in our shot, you can see that's reflecting quite a bit. GoPro, stop recording. GoPro, start recording. Just going to work on some of these breakers that are a little farther back. Not going to do too much on them. Don't really break. Back here, it's a little difficult to tell the difference between the breakers and the troughs, mostly because of the time of day. This is, I'm not sure I can really remember when this was taken, but it's definitely in the evening, whether it was summer evening or later in the fall, I don't really remember. The wave on this side here has not broken. It is just starting to swell as it moves into shore. So we're going to have a clean dark line right at the top there. So we're just going to take some of this, just Okay, so I want to put in some of this orange glow in the trough area. So we're going to use a little bit of that blue in there, but lots of white. It is in the reference picture, but it is very low key. So it's much too thick. So one of the things that we mentioned in the start of this video is the grouping. So when you're doing these light, don't just dab it everywhere. Pay attention to the grouping that you're seeing in the reference. That goes to describing the condition of that water, whether it's completely choppy or it's a little bit restful right there. I mean, this water is pretty choppy, but there are places where it's a little bit calmer between the troughs. And we're definitely going to do a lot more of this right below the sun. When you see me rolling the brush like that, what I'm doing is I'm not putting paint on, I'm actually taking paint off, especially off the back part of the brush. I want most of the paint just on the tip. We just put a little bit in that crashing. We're still going to put white on top of this, and this isn't actually substantially lighter than the trough area, but I think we may add more white to that just to get it to stand out from the trough area a little bit more. See what some of that. This is pretty much pure white. I will be doing another wave video that is daytime. I mean, this is rather than evening. When you start really looking at water and waves, and it's especially nice in a photo as opposed to real life, because you have time to, I mean, they're gorgeous to watch in real life, don't get me wrong, but when you're painting it, you really get to examine the way the water moves, and it's a little hard to do when it's still moving. But it really is beautiful the way the shadows and the depths and the highlight reflects off the waves. We're really getting to the point where we're now looking at things that don't look quite right, or so we can stroke over them. GoPro, stop recording. So we're just going to do a little bit more of the shadowed crash. So we're using, as this has got a little bit more phthalo in it, just to give it a sort of aqua green look. It's one of the things I really like about using a tablet is you can zoom right in instead of guessing what something looks like. You can actually see. So not that you're copying it, that you're just trying to get the gist of what that crashing water looks like. I think the more time you spend trying to copy something exactly what's there, the stiffer your painting gets. And it's nice to have a free-flowing. Take a little bit of that up. I think we're going to use a little lighter version of that. Actually, a few years ago, was teaching a class, and I had one of the students bring in reference that was the same size as her canvas, which was amazing because it's expensive way to go, but you could actually really see what it was that you were painting exactly at the right scale. I feel fortunate to be painting in the time that we are, just the same as I'm sharing this with you on the web. I can see so many other artists around the world and the technology that, I mean, when I first started painting, I was working with photographs, and it was an expensive endeavor. And now I think my library sits at around 80,000 photos. So that would have been a heck of a lot of money if I was paying Kodak. Keep recording. Keep recording. So I'm just going to push that sun up glow a little bit. I've been waiting for that to dry. So I think I might get out just a little bit of bismuth yellow. This is a bismuth yellow light, and it's a very expensive yellow to buy, and you don't need to use it except when you need something that's going to be opaque. Yellows are very transparent generally, and so bismuth yellow is similar to cad yellow, but both cover very well. Both are pretty expensive, but they both are quite permanent. Bismuth being a little bit more permanent outside than cadmium is. Cadmiums are sensitive to sunlight, moisture and sunlight. You can see I really overdid the red that I put down on the palette. And so what I'm painting here is when you have an intense light of the sun right at the horizon, you often get that where it bleeds into the water. We'll just suck a little bit of that back. GoPro, stop recording.
Church's founders had been an independent group,
stop recording.
not fond of denominational labels and the rampant fundamentalism and
GoPro, stop recording. In this image, you can see down the beach. So we're seeing the perspective of the waves. All these waves vanish to a common point. This is a particularly orderly beach. A lot of times you get much more chaotic patterns, but there's still that same perspective. And as the waves move away down the beach, they come closer together and diminish in size and spacing between the waves to a common vanishing point. It's important to look at these troughs and the small peaks. There is a pattern to the way the light is reflected off the water, and there's a grouping to it. See if you can spot that, and just don't randomly dash colors here and there.